Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, good Monday morning, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. Underway as we speak, historic event in Israel as President Donald Trump is expected to soon address, well, he's there, as Parliament is underway in Israel. And I believe Benjamin Netanyahu spoke earlier. There's some others. And speaking to the lead up of President Trump, this, of course, as after 238 days in Gaza, no more living hostages in Hamas captivity. There was variation of reports regarding the hostages that were no longer alive and as to how many of those have been turned over to Israel. I believe the Red Cross is acting as sort of a go-between when it comes to these transfers. But in terms of the living hostages, all of those have been released. And we're going to try and keep an eye on when Trump is speaking. If we are able to go to it, we will do that. I'm sure, of course, all throughout today, as well as some of tomorrow, you're probably going to hear sound bites from it, as it's this is really the sort of thing that so many people, even at the point it is now, believed was never possible. And I listen, rightfully so. There is a great deal of caution. The fact that things have gotten to this point, however, again, this is different, and I've gone over this, as have so many others, because Trump has crafted this agreement that involves so many other countries. And so this is no longer some sort of agreement between Hamas and the Israelis in which everyone is just an observer and just background noise of commentary, Monday morning quarterbackers throughout the country. But these are individuals that have signed on to this. These countries have signed on to it as well. So breaking this agreement is not just a breaking of the agreement with Israel, but with dozens of other Middle Eastern countries of influence and significance. And so this the process itself is one that marginalizes Hamas. In fact, there's an interesting story about how this weekend Hamas has been engaged in gunfire with other factions within Gaza. And this is presumably the way it's being reported anyhow, because Hamas was still wanting to domestically have some sort of presence, declaring, well, all right, we're going to move forward with this peace agreement, but we still want to be in charge of security. And other factions within Gaza have said, nope, we don't think so. Your time's over. And this is all part of the Trump's chess moves to make Hamas less and less and less relevant, to go from the institution, the entity that was able to call the shots when it came to all of this, to an entity that even domestically is being written off as your time is done. Now, will that hold? Time will tell. I suspect that domestically, Hamas now, essentially, they've, over the weekend, been fighting against their own people, firing on their, quote, own people as they've exchanged gunfire. And this is what I've meant by the process itself, the agreement itself being something that even if Hamas decides at some point they don't want to abide to, it is still a move in the right direction as it increasingly marginalizes them to, perhaps being obsolete and just part of the historical record. And, a lot can happen, but just the fact that you've got people in Israel and people in Gaza both chanting Trump's name, and the welcoming to the Israeli parliament. I mean, it's an incredibly crazy thing. And I am one of this, you can mark this down as two things that I really thought would never, ever happen. that Trump has made possible. One, during his first term, he made us energy independent. We suddenly became a country that was exporting more energy than we were importing. I just had my entire life, like many of you, heard that everyone who ran for president, we were going to get ourselves off the dependency of Mideast oil. And it was something Republicans said, it was something Democrats said, yet it was something that never actually occurred. And he did that. And now looking at the situation here in the Middle East, and it does look as if Trump is taking the podium. I'm kind of flying blind here because I'm going off of a stream online from Salem News Channel as opposed to carrying one of the television channels. And I don't know. It's an audio-only feed right now. So I'm going to get the latest news update locally here with Angela Luna and then try and join, if possible, Best in Progress, Trump speaking before Israeli parliament. All right, before we go to I do want to go ahead and join in progress. A couple seconds delayed so we can get the beginning of Trump speaking here before the Israeli parliament.
To the Almighty God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Few harrowing years in darkness and captivity, 20 courageous hostages are returning to the glorious embrace of their families, and it is glorious. 28 more precious loved ones are coming home at last to rest in this sacred soil for all of time. And after so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity. This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of the age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East. I want to express my gratitude to a man of exceptional courage and patriotism, whose partnership did so much to make this momentous day possible. You know who I'm talking about. There's only one, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Please stand up. It's not easy, I want to tell you that. He's not the easiest guy to deal with, but that's what makes him great. That's what makes him good. Thank you very much, baby. Great job. Let me also convey my tremendous appreciation for all of the nations of the Arab and Muslim world that came together to press Hamas to set the hostages free and to send them home. We had a lot of help. We had a lot of help from a lot of people that you wouldn't suspect. And I want to thank them very much for that. It's an incredible triumph for Israel and the world to have all of these nations working together as partners in peace. And it's pretty unusual for you to see that, but it happened in this case. This was a very unusual point in time, a brilliant point in time. Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change and change very much for the better. Like the USA right now, it will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East. It's going to work together. I'd like to thank several great American patriots for their invaluable help in getting something done that almost everyone thought was absolutely impossible. We were wasting our time. So many people said, you're just wasting your time. But we weren't, because we had talented people working with us, and we had people that love your country, and frankly, people that love the region. They love the Middle East. I want to thank my friend Steve Witkoff. You know, Steve was chosen by me. He never did this before, but I knew him as a few things. He was a great businessman, but I know a lot of great businessmen, to be honest with you. He had tremendous negotiating skills, but I know a lot of people that negotiate pretty well, although it is an art. But there are people that can negotiate pretty well. But most importantly with Steve, he's just a great guy. Everybody loved him. Everybody. I mean, I know some negotiators that are so good, but you wouldn't have had peace in the Middle East. It would be in World War III right now with some of these guys. Everybody loves Steve, and they respect him, and they somehow can relate to him. I've known him for many years, and I've seen it over and over again.
להוציא את חבר הכנסת להוציא אותו מהאולם, להוציא אותו מיד, החוצה, החוצה.
Please expel this Knesset member. Please expel this Knesset member. Please expel Knesset member Kasif out of the hall. Please expel him immediately.
Okay. This actually might be a good second to break in here. The interruption here, President Trump, those of you listening on the Salem radio network, we will jump back into this in just a little bit. We're watching on the Salem News Channel live at the Knesset where President Trump is addressing the Israeli parliament, and he was interrupted by a protester there. So they're removing the protester. President Trump is continuing his speech. The parliament is erupted in some applause to kind of reset the table a little bit. So this would be a good time for us to take a quick break.
All right, anyway. We are, as you can hear, obviously joining live Salem News Channel, Salem Radio Network, as the coverage from the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and noted there a bit of a disruption as Trump is the invited speaker. Of course, we are going to go ahead and take our local break, and then, if appropriate, we will join that back in progress. Otherwise, much more to cover for the day. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. HunterHardscapes.com is the site, your key to access to have the premier hardscaping and or landscaping for your home, your business, whether you're talking about renovations, something that is an upgrade, or maybe you're going to be building soon. You just purchased a piece of land, and that outdoor living space is just as important and sometimes more important than the indoor living space. If you're like us, that's where collectively we now as a family spend most of our time together. And they, top to bottom, everything from the hardscaping itself, retaining walls, paver patios, sod installation, garden bed construction. Maybe that's something that you've been thinking about doing. Plus, efficient draining solutions, landscape lighting, sound, water features if you want. They can craft it all. And maybe you don't know what it is that you want. I know what that is the situation I was in when Daniel Hunter came over, and I instead of telling him what I was wanting, I was telling him what I wanted to use it for. And then he was able to design a number of different options so that I could then have some sort of visual and go from there. And you can, of course, do that as well. But I recommend way far in advance because they are premier, they're highly sought after, and because of that, we're not talking about hiring them and then next month your project's going to be underway. This is something, again, if you are looking at spring, maybe because you're building or perhaps because you are going to use that tax refund to put it back into your home if you have a refund coming. Springtime be a great time to get things set up. You can visit them online. And there is a cost calculator as well that they have. It just gives you a ballpark idea of what you're looking at, and that is at hunterhardscapes.com. That's hunterhardscapes.com. You can also find them under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. So after 738 days in Gaza, no more living hostages in Hamas captivity, something that just the whole peace in the Middle East thing, getting as far advanced as things are beyond what pretty much anyone other than Donald Trump, and I'm sure the people surrounding him, felt was possible. Beginning with the Abraham Accords during his first term. And now, of course, that is something that is expected to potentially continue on. Saudi Arabia being a country that could very well likely be part of the next chapter in the Abraham Accords while this is occurring at the same time. And so what we really are watching, it really is meaningful, historic, just life-altering changes being made in the Middle East. And it's just, you think about how it is that the left has long characterized Donald Trump as some sort of crazed maniac who doesn't know what he's doing. He is someone who doesn't have the book smarts to understand how to deal with world leaders. You may recall one of the themes when Biden made his way to the White House was that finally the world was going to be respecting us again because no country had any level of respect for Donald Trump, and now we're seeing the actual results. We're going to go back, Salem News Channel, once again carrying Trump's address to the parliament in Jerusalem.
As you know, we decisively won World War I. We decisively won World War II decisively. And everything in between and everything before it, we won everything. And then they had the brilliant idea of changing the name from war, it was war, to defense. And with that went a certain thinking. And we fought in a very politically correct way after that. We always had the strongest military, and now we have a stronger military than we've ever had before because of my first term. I've totally rebuilt the military, every aspect of it. But we have, if you think, we settled 8 wars in 8 months. I'm now including this one, by the way, if that's okay. They may say, well, that was quick. Because yesterday I was saying 7, but now I can say 8. The hostages are back. The hostages are back. It is a good feeling. Isn't that nice to say? I just said the hostage. First time I said the hostages are back. It feels so good to say it. But when you settle 8 wars in 8 months, that means you don't like war. Everyone thought I was going to be brutal. In fact, I remember Hillary Clinton during a debate, she said, look at him. He's going to go into war with everybody. And actually, she said, he's got a personality. It's all about war. No, and my personality actually is all about stopping wars. And it seems to work. Seems to work. But it also means this name change and our attitude that we're not going to go into a war. But if we do, we're going to win that war like nobody has ever won a war before. We will not be politically correct, but we're not going to be there. And I think, as you mentioned, Bibi, before, peace through strength. And that's what it's all about. The United States has the greatest and most powerful military in the right now history of the world. I can tell you we have weapons that nobody's ever dreamt of. I only hope we never have to use them. I rebuilt the military. I was proud to do it, but some of the things I hated to do. I hated certain of the weapons because the level of power is so enormous, it's so dangerous, so bad. But we have to do what we have to do. We make the best weapons in the world, and we've got a lot of them. And we've given a lot to Israel, frankly. And
All right, we're
All right, so that is Trump. He's talking a bit into some more of the domestic policy aspects regarding our own military, discussing the transition back to the Department of War, of which it was once upon a time until it got switched to Department of Defense, and moving it back to a more proactive label to that department. That's President Donald Trump speaking before the Knesset in Israel. He was welcomed by the Speaker of the Knesset, Amir Ohana, who noted that President Donald Trump is, quote, the best friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. And what was the Babylon Bee headline?
Oh shoot!
Like former McDonald's
It
employee.
was Washington Examiner, and it was something like
Oh, the Washington Examiner did that.
and it was
Is
their
funny.
opinion piece.
Yeah, a former McDonald's employee.
Broker peace deal. Yep. I'll see if I can find it. I'll put it in your must-read headlines.
We played audio last week from the White House in which a number of non-mainstream journalists were talking about their coverage of Antifa. And there was a journalist who actually was mainstream local in Seattle, and she talked about how she had Trump derangement syndrome for like 8 years, and how she finally, because she started paying attention to what was actually happening versus what was being reported, and as a truth seeker realized that her Trump derangement syndrome was birthed out of disinformation and irrational thoughts of paranoia. And she made the offhand remark that now that she's past that, she even finds Trump a little bit humorous. And if you are able to get past that, it's just, you think about these historic moments, these historic speeches, and the world is accustomed to how beautiful the words are, and just, how just amazing, like almost poets some of these the speakers would be over time. And Trump is, he's just kind of off the cuff. He's like, now I can say 8 wars. I think that's pretty good. I think I did a pretty good job. In when you get past the Trump derangements, they're just as not in modern, or I mean, just Trump is really, truly one of a kind in terms of his results, due to his approach, And he presents himself. It's so funny because on one hand, he gets painted as being arrogant, but on the other, he talks like a normal person. The flowery language with the massive words that oftentimes important people want to use to sound like they're really, really smart. They're so intent on what is this going to look like in the history books, and having a phrase that is carrying on through the generations. And Trump, he doesn't care about that stuff. He cares about the results. And then it's kind of like a guy that is coming in and he's like, all right, everyone, here's the update. Here's what I've done so far. This is what's going on. It's awesome. He's kind of like trying to rally everybody to be excited about the progress. And as he noted, past critics of his declaring that it was going to be the end of the world, World War III under Donald Trump. And this guy, in 6 months, 7 months, 7 peace deals, things that no leader on this planet has been able to do. For any of those individual 7 instances, no world leader has been able to get peace out of any one of them. And here he's just boom, boom, boom. How do you not? I mean, I really wonder, what does Trump think of himself? What must that be like? Not just to be massively successful in ways that have been unimaginable and unobtainable by so many others, but the people whom have, long fancied themselves and are treated as the great hope for such deals are the ones who have been mocking him, the ones who have been claiming that there's no way he can do it. They have been his loudest critics, calling on one hand he's an isolationist. You may recall that from his first term. Oh, he's an isolationist. Look have you ever seen an isolationist responsible for so many peace deals? And so Trump, just to self-reflect on the fact that he's been able to do all of this stuff while the so-called experts and brilliant people of the world have mocked him and warned the world of his dangers, and they weren't able to come anywhere close to doing this stuff. I can't imagine what goes on in his head. It's a remarkable thing. Going to take a break. More ahead. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line is 417-447-KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. couple of your text messages after the weather here regarding Trump, and he is speaking as we speak before the Knesset in Israel, being called by their speaker, if you will, the leader of the Knesset, the single greatest friend Israel's ever had in the White House. Remember prior to October 7th when the left, they were really trying to convince people that Trump was anti-Semitic? What a weird... He again is proven to be a really, really bad Hitler. Look at this. Hitler is being applauded in the Knesset. Hitler is being called the greatest friend in the White House that Israel has ever seen, that the Jewish people have ever come into contact with, ever had the pleasure of knowing. And Trump, yes, has once again in just amazing historic fashion proven to be the worst Hitler ever.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see isolated showers before noon along and north of I-44, and then mostly cloudy with a high near 77. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 83, and taking a look at Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 82.
Some of your text messages on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line 417-447-KSGF. As we were playing audio earlier, President Donald Trump speaking before Israel's Knesset, as he was obviously received warmly, as putting it mildly, being described by their speaker as the greatest friend in the White House Israel has ever seen or had. This is one of those special moments when you feel proud, very proud to be American and to be led by an American. Another noting, it's terribly sad that we have friends and family who would rather see peace fail than to see Trump succeed, and that is unfortunate. But it isn't just when it comes to the Middle East, obviously. I mean, you look at all of these cities that are failed cities, particularly when it comes to providing a safe quality of life, specifically for people of color, and they fail them miserably. And Trump wants to come in and do what occurred in Washington, D.C., and God forbid, create an environment where black people can walk around and not have to worry about being shot. And they pull out all the stops to prevent that from happening, because to the point of that text message is just, it's sad, doesn't even, I mean, it's pathetic, it's disgusting that people would rather see horrible things continue to occur than have Donald Trump be given some sort of victory. Usually, there are people that are unaffected by these things, and it's generally people on the left who love to pat themselves on the back as being multicultural and anti-racist, yet it seems as if every attempt that they make to prevent Trump from being successful and making life better, it's people of color who are the ones who suffer. They are the ones who benefit from this, whether it's in the Middle East or in downtown Chicago or Baltimore or Washington, D.C. Another text, wonder if any Democrats will ever say good job at Trump on this historic day, or if they're just going to be nothing but crickets. And on a side note, if a Democrat does come out and say good job, are they going to be drummed out of the Democratic Party? Well, now Fetterman has already said, and I don't think this will come as any surprise, he's the one Democrat senator that doesn't suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. And I don't know if, like, having a stroke somehow destroys that part of the brain that houses Trump derangement syndrome, but he appears to be absent of it. And he clearly doesn't agree with Trump on all of the issues, but much like other issues, this peace in the Middle East, he is noted is incredible. It's a fantastic step forward in that, yeah, if this thing holds, he'll lead the delegation to nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Hillary Clinton has also, through her gritted teeth, said that this is a good thing, and we'll see how long that lasts. Here's my favorite, though. These people are pathetic. Former U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken voiced support Thursday for a Gaza plan laid out by President Donald Trump, saying it was in line with the deal he pursued under Joe Biden.
Okay.
He said, I do think it's cause for some hope. I certainly hope the plan gets fully accepted, fully adopted, and fully implemented. This is essentially the plan that developed over many months and more or less was left in the drawer for the incoming administration, and I'm very glad they picked it up. How pathetic.
They are pathetic.
No person in their right mind would... It defies everything that they say about Trump. Why would Trump pick up and run with their peace plan that they left in a drawer somewhere when Donald Trump is the opposite of what Antony Blinken is, and Hillary Clinton, and John Kerry, and Joe Biden, these brilliant masterminds of diplomacy? Why would Trump look at their plan and think, yeah, that's a good plan? Even if, in some alternate timeline universe, that were true, that, oh yes, this is the exact same plan that they had come up with and they had it in a drawer somewhere, and Trump's like, oh, look at this, I think this is a good idea. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't think that I have the abilities to bring any sort of peace agreement together, so I'm going to see if Joe Biden and Antony Blinken left anything behind that I can run with here. Even if that were the case, which it's not, clearly, it's a little classless to be out there being like, well, yeah, that actually, I laid the groundwork for all of this. They laid the groundwork for this, like they laid the groundwork for Trump cleaning up Washington, D.C., like they laid the groundwork for Donald Trump securing the border, like they laid the groundwork for Donald Trump coming up with all these historic trade deals, and putting together peace agreements between half a dozen other countries. the pathetic nature of this, it's not even an issue of anger or even irritation at the previous administration attempting to take credit for something Donald Trump has done. It's just sad. Well, this is basically the same. Oh, okay. Donald Trump was actually asked about this. He was on Air Force One on his way over to Israel, and he was asked about Blinken, claiming that all of this was actually something that he laid the groundwork for.
Everybody knows it's a joke. Look, they did such a bad job. This should have never happened. This wouldn't have even happened. That was weak leadership, terrible. And the same thing with Russia, Ukraine. If a decent president, not a great president like me, not a great president. If a decent president was in, you wouldn't have had the Russia-Ukraine. And this is, I would say, even more so. This was bad policy by Biden and by Obama. Remember when Bibi came and he begged that you not do what they were doing with Iran? You remember that, right? Begged them. And they wouldn't even listen to him. Everything they did was the opposite of what you should have done. And it's nice that they try and take a little credit. That was years ago, and the mistakes were made years ago. And it was both by Biden and Obama.
So what did you do so differently? Because I know a lot of it was behind the scenes. So what did you do so much differently than Joe Biden and to end the war?
I resonated with the Arab leaders, the Muslim leaders, and the Jewish leaders. For whatever reason, you tell me why. You know, he said that in my first news conference, I answered more questions of him than Biden did for years. And I think that's pretty close to being true.
Now, there were no Pinocchios in the fact check.
That's right.
And so that was Trump again being asked about Blinken's claim that they laid the groundwork for this. And Trump responded by noting none of this would have happened if it weren't for that administration. He was talking about October 7th and the need to release these hostages. Clearly, the ongoing war, if you will, has been something generation after generation. But when it came to October 7th, it's widely recognized that because we were talking about the Biden administration, there were no concerns about the United States standing up for its ally in Israel. That we had signaled through the Biden administration that we were no longer allies of the Israelis. And as we would see subsequent to October 7th, the talking points of Hamas were being echoed through the halls of the White House and by many Democrats in Congress. I mean, they were using Hamas as talking points. And I mean, can you absolutely prove 100% if Biden had not been in the White House that October 7th would not have occurred, that it would have occurred even if Donald Trump had been in there at that particular time? Clearly, you can't prove that sort of thing. But I think most rational people recognize the reaction to not only weak leadership from the United States of America, but when it becomes clear that we were severing our alliance with Israel and that there was no better time to launch such an attack as was done during the Biden administration. He was asked the question, it was Peter Doocy, I believe, on Air Force One. And he asked the question, well, what did you do differently? And Trump essentially was like, I don't know. I just got to get along with these folks. And that may seem like a really unsophisticated answer, but this is what so many of these brilliant minds with numerous awards and their paper diplomas don't recognize and understand. Trump just knows how to deal with people. You see, everything for academics, or it's as if it must have been done before. And you read and memorize how to approach a situation. It's called book smarts. And that's where the failure so often comes, because what they'll do is they assign brilliance to experts because they've been just labeled that, even though they've never had any true meaningful results when it comes to doing something like Trump has done in crafting peace. And they just mimic one another and they repeat. And that's why the results are always the same. But and that's the way big government people think. Everything is by process. That's what matters more than outcome. It is the process. And Trump doesn't operate that way. Trump doesn't have some sort of memorized process and, well, this is how you're supposed to do things. He just knows how to sit down with someone and get a sense of what will motivate them to do what it is that we need them to do. It's you can call it a gift, you can call it intuition, call it what you want, but this is why there isn't really an answer. I mean, yeah, you can say, well, we offered him this, and we offered him that, and we presented this. But where did those ideas come from? It's Trump's understanding of how to deal with people. Several months ago, he was asked a question during a press conference. It had to do with one of these countries. And it may have even been Ukraine and Russia. But I think it wasn't because it was recent. But point being is he was asked, well, why do you think that you'll be able to do this? Why do you think you'll be able to come up with some sort of agreement that these sides will agree upon? And his answer was, because that's just what I do, or something along those lines. And that is, it's what he does. Let me tell you something else I like about Trump. Is he fully, verbally, on a number of occasions, has fully acknowledged, I thought I'd get this Russian-Ukraine thing done first. Not when he's being asked about it, but he just openly, while talking about this stuff, has said, that one has turned out to be a lot more difficult than I thought. I like that he's just straightforward and honest about it. And acknowledging that what he has been able to do with all of these other countries, all of these other conflicts, he thought that Russia and Ukraine would fall into place quite easily, and that was something that he could take care of, probably first and foremost in terms of foreign policy. That might give him the credibility to be able to get this other stuff done. But again, where Trump is successful so often is recognizing this isn't working, so we have to try something new, instead of just trying the same thing over and over and over again. And I think that it is refreshing that when, on the few occasions the whole issue of peace deals come up, that he references Ukraine and Russia and fully acknowledges, yeah, I thought that was going to be easier. It's turned out to be a lot harder than I thought it was. I think that's a refreshing, transparent form of honesty that you don't usually get when it comes to these sorts of situations. If you've not been to that Seafood Express there on Chestnut Expressway yet, I definitely recommend it. Great new partners on board with us, and very pleased with that new relationship we have. Ozarks Elder Law, if you don't plan at all, then you are planning for potential heartbreak, disaster, stress. You need to make sure that once you pass along, you think, well, it's a family farm, it stays in the family. If you don't nail that stuff down, guess who steps in? Government. They step in with things 100 years ago That if you went to local government, like, hey, we're having a dispute here when it comes to who gets what and so forth, they'd be like, well, that's a family deal. That has nothing to do with us. But as you know, government gets bigger. It gets more involved in every aspect of your life. It can't stand, the people in government so often can't stand the idea of not calling the shots. And so unless you have those legal documents done by professionals, not downloading offline for just $59.99 or whatever, and it's got an official seal on it, Ozarks Elder Law. Free consultation, 10 area locations. If you are 18 years or older, you need to have this done. OzarksElderLaw.com and Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. Another traffic. All right, we should have Congressman Burles, and I believe we are going to be able to connect up with him tomorrow. We are going to be talking about, or it is Columbus Day after all, so it's a holiday for, I know some schools are out, some aren't. I believe banks are going to be closed now. We are going to talk about Columbus Day as well, as Trump has restored Columbus Day. There's a Just the News article that Trump restores Columbus Day to the elation of Italians, but some liberals resist. And this, of course, is hilariously renamed Indigenous People Day because, Christopher Columbus and slaves. And this is in complete defiance of history and reality, given that some of the biggest slave traders, well before Christopher Columbus ever came here, were the, quote, Native Americans. And some of them were pretty bad people, wiping other tribes completely off the map. So it's always a great time to reflect on the realities of history. All that ahead, I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company, text line 417447, KSGF. Some of your text messages. Let's see. The first hour, we were airing some of the live coverage of President Donald Trump speaking before the Knesset, that's the Israeli parliament. As, of course, all of the living hostages have been released, all of the living hostages that Hamas had held. Trump is also slated to go to Egypt tomorrow. So just historic and meaningful ways, not symbolism, but in actual meaningful ways. And we were also talking about the fact that Antony Blinken claimed that this was actually something that he and Joe Biden had planned, and all of this, it's just Trump picking up where they left off, and he was really glad to see that happening. And Trump was asked what he does differently, what he did differently in order to create this historic pathway to peace. And regarding or compared to Joe Biden, someone had texted in what he did differently was wake up before noon. So that probably, yes, was a big one. Well, I think Joe Biden used to wake up before noon, but he was back in bed before noon and then would wake up again sometime later. Another noting with what's been going on with the shutdown and Israel isn't a little bit disturbingly quiet that AOC and that wing of the Democrats have been quiet. Well, this is something that we've talked about. We were actually talking about it off air. Those Democrats who have screamed loudest and most virtuously about the need for a ceasefire are silent. Where are they? Where are the Ocasio-Cortezes and the Omars? The extreme left wing of the Democrat Party who have portrayed the situation in the Middle East as genocide, these human rights atrocities. It has to stop now. All right. Well, Trump's got that ball rolling. Where are you to celebrate him? Where are you to reach across the aisle and demonstrate that you really do care about peace in the Middle East, that it isn't something that you just use as a weapon to hit on Donald Trump? I think it speaks volumes. I mean, we all know what it means, the fact that they're keeping their mouths shut and they're not saying anything, because it's never been about saving lives. It's never been about a desire for people to live harmoniously within that region of the world. It has been something that they have used as a weapon to attack political opposition, Donald Trump namely. There's a great deal of criticism. We talked about this Friday when the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize was announced, and that Trump did not receive it, but it's something that the deadline for submissions for the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize wrapped up in January. It was end of January, and the committee has leeway to add names that weren't nominated by the public, but that wraps up in February. And so unless they just ignored those rules and decided to go ahead and give it to Donald Trump, then they're going by the rules. And these submissions for Trump to receive, based off of what has occurred thus far in Israel, Gaza, the hostage release, and so forth, that is something that can be submitted between now and January 31st. So he can be eligible for the 2026 award. Well, the actual winner, which is an opposition leader in Venezuela of that Nobel Peace Prize, was on Fox News, among other places. And here's what she had to say regarding her winning it and then Donald Trump's play in all of it.
And they decided to dedicate it to President Trump because he deserves it. Because not only has he been involved in only a few months in solving 8 wars, but his actions have been decisive to have Venezuela now at a threshold of freedom after 26 years of tyranny that have destroyed the lives of millions of Venezuela, destabilized the region, and undermined institutions in the United States, because having Venezuela as a safe haven of the enemies of the United States and using our territory and our resources to hurt the American people and American institutions is certainly a threat to the national security of the United States and the security of the hemisphere. But President Trump has been very clear, courageous in terms of dismantling this criminal structure. And on behalf of the Venezuelan people, I reaffirmed our gratitude and our commitment to this cause for the whole America. So I insist he deserves it.
So again, that's Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who was the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, dedicating it to President Donald Trump. We've got weather coming up in a moment, traffic as well. Right now, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see isolated showers before noon along and north of I-44, and then mostly cloudy with a high near 77. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 83. And taking a look at Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 82.
MAGA critics call for Bad Bunny Super Bowl performance be canceled after a Yankees incident. So evidently, Bad Bunny's the Puerto Rican artist that was chosen for the Super Bowl halftime show, that most people seemingly within their target demographic had no idea who he is, or brilliant pick out of the gate there. But so apparently he was at a let's see, what game? It was some baseball game.
Oh, yes, I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
New York Yankees.
Yes.
And he refused to stand during God Bless America. And listen, he's made no secret of the fact that he thinks that we're a racist country and we should not be enforcing our borders and ICE age. I mean, he's just regurgitating the talking points of Democrats. But this, why is it so difficult for these people to choose someone who does not dislike this country? It doesn't even have to be a political thing. Now, it has become political because people who love America tend to be in the Republican column, the conservative column, the the Trump column, while those who hate America, think it's racist, don't really understand its history at all, tend to be in the Democrat column. This became very clear when Make America Great Again, something that you would think everyone would agree with. I mean, it doesn't mean that if you are a Democrat, that you have to jump on board with the Trump campaign, but they literally turn against that declaration. I've noted that when Clinton and Gore were running, part of their theme was Make America Great Again. You didn't have Republicans all of a sudden turn against making America great again and claiming that people who want to make America great again are a bunch of racists or a bunch of bigots or a bunch of fascists or a bunch of Hitlers, a bunch of Nazis. You didn't have that happen. You're like, yeah, it's a campaign theme, of course. Oh, gee, pick something real controversial there. Make America great again. Who doesn't want to make America great again? Well, fast forward to Donald Trump, and Democrats decide that that's a bad thing, to want to make America great again, because if you look back, I'm not being facetious here, how many times did Democrats ask Trump supporters, well, exactly when was this country great? When is it you're talking about? This country has never been great. There are elected Democrats who have declared that. Unfortunately, Democrats have made wanting America to succeed a bad thing. And so this is just so crazy. If you're an American and you're not even necessarily for a halftime show, for a game that is synonymous with America, you don't even necessarily have to pick someone that loves America, but maybe somebody that doesn't openly display their disdain for the country. Do other countries do this? I don't know. Maybe they do. Do other countries that when they are taking what is an annual moment that is reflective of the culture outside of the political realm, it's an event that should cross lines politically because it doesn't have anything to do with politics, and they're like, I know what let's do. Let's pick someone that is going to have the world's eyes on them for this performance during this event that is known as an event that is part of our culture as a country. Let's pick someone that trashes on our country. Who does that? And it's crazy to me that you have people on the left. It's like, unless it is someone that doesn't like America, they feel as if it's a bad choice. It has to be someone that overtly has spoken out against the country, against our laws, against Americans expecting everyone to be held to the exact same standards. Listen, I break the law, I get in trouble, I go to jail, people will come here illegally. Probably the same thing should happen to them for wanting equality. We get labeled racist and so forth, but it is this insane perspective. I'll give you another example. When the Top Gun Maverick movie came out, however long ago that was at this point, a couple of years, 2-3 years, and people really liked it. And a lot of people liked it because like, oh, wow, this is awesome. This is kind of like a America's Awesome movie. Who hated it? People on the left. And why? Well, clearly this is a MAGA movie. Well, just because it didn't trash on America? And I mean, frankly, it wasn't even some massive rah, 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 go America with these overt themes. It just happened to be that the people who were on the side of America were really awesome and they did really cool things. And you're like, yeah, awesome. I mean, God forbid. The left has done such a great job, sadly, of making people feeling proud of America, turning that into some sort of bad thing, into, well, you must be a Trump supporter. Is it any wonder that when people are asked across the political spectrum, are you proud to be an American, that Democrats consistently, the vast majority of them are like, no. Well, why would they be? What a dumb question to ask those people. When everything that is considered pro-American is considered on Trump's side or part of MAGA America, it is built upon racism. All of these mantras that just get drummed into their head over and over and over again. And then we just can't figure out, why don't these people like America? And they are the ones who, celebrate the choice of, this halftime show. Because why? Because the guy is seen as anti-American. So they love it. And they act as if people who are like, do we really have to have somebody that trashes on our country? That somebody who boycotted touring in our country until, of course, this came along. See, this is big enough that all of a sudden his virtues are put in his back pocket and kept quiet for a bit of time. And, of course, the reason this is coming up again is because he was at a Yankees game and refused to stand for God Bless America. This was obviously noticed. And it's, to me, it's not even political. It's not pro-Trump, it shouldn't be. Just, is it not? It just shouldn't be that difficult to find someone who, again, doesn't have to be some sort of patriotic American, but maybe somebody that just doesn't trash on the country. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, we're going to get traffic, and then 90 seconds from there, speak with Congressman Eric Burleson. Now, Turning Point USA did make the announcement that they are going to offer an alternative halftime show, presumably populated with artists that are not anti-American. And they do have a site. It's AmericanHalftimeShow.com, and you can sign up. We'll get this posted to receive updates regarding any sort of details. Obviously, this is in the early planning stages. They do ask what sort of genres of music would you like to see featured, and then you can, again, sign up for text updates about Turning Point USA itself. So that is something that will be an alternate to the Bad Bunny performance at the halftime show, which I'll probably watch, the All-American halftime show, just because I couldn't tell you a Bad Bunny song, and I just can't get tired of this populating these all-American events with people that don't like America. It's just a little bit off-putting. Traffic update, Congressman Burleson next. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see isolated showers before noon along and north of I-44, and then mostly cloudy with a high near 77. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 83. And taking a look at Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 82.
Congressman Burleson joins us, and the first part of the program, the first hour, we played some of the audio live from the Israeli parliament. Donald Trump up there speaking, of course, very warmly received. There was, I think, one point somebody that had to be removed because he was hollering something. Don't know what it was, but other than that, it was just a fantastic reception. One of the visuals that to me, still more than anything, breaks through the conventional wisdoms of what we're accustomed to was the fact that you had people just with the announcement of the hostage release, people cheering in Israel, but then you also had visuals and videos of people in Gaza that were cheering the end to all of this as well. And to see, quote, both sides celebrating the same thing is something that in and of itself is historic. Trump is headed to Egypt, where 20 plus other countries will have leadership there to sign on to an agreement. I mean, it really is the sort of thing that I think most people felt would actually never happen. And though there is a lot to accomplish as part of the different steps here, but just getting this far into it, I think is a pretty remarkable thing. So, with that being said, your thoughts?
It's a historic day. This is really something that most people would have thought would be impossible, which is that we finally have peace in the Middle East, that Israel finally has peace. I got to tour Israel about 6 months after the attacks, and it was horrific. Speaking to the families of those hostages was just gut wrenching, and which is why my heart is soaring to see these 20 individuals come home. It's sad that not everyone was able to come home, but yeah, finally, it's fantastic that Trump demonstrated the strength that was needed, the negotiating prowess to figure out a way to cripple Hamas, and to do that by directly confronting the people that were propping up Hamas. Iran was basically doing proxy wars through Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. So when Israel, was responding to the attacks, the direct attacks, and it's finally Iran was exposed, the United States stepped in and ended their nuclear program. And then when you have the, Qatar, who is providing financial support, and you've got Turkey that's also providing support, Trump brought those leaders into the room and said, "Look, you want to do business with the United States? I know you guys like to do business. This." And he did hardball negotiating with them and with Benjamin Netanyahu, because they, Netanyahu, wanted to go all in and finish the job. But I think that this was the measured approach, and it's just unbelievable what he accomplished.
There was a story in Daily Caller about how, and I think this is all part of it and quite brilliant, but Daily Caller had a story regarding just within hours of the agreement to the ceasefire, you had the Hamas set up these checkpoints across the Strip. And much of it was, they essentially were saying, well, we're still going to be doing security in the area. And rival entities have been standing up and saying, no, we don't think so. We'll take it from here. And so there were gun battles throughout the weekend between some of these rivals and Hamas. And so all of this, I believe, is a trickle-down effect of this approach by Trump to marginalize Hamas to the point that everyone finds them not only unnecessary but counterproductive. And so to see that Hamas not only no longer has the support of all of these other Middle Eastern countries, but within Gaza over the weekend, while they tried to cling domestically, and not that they aren't going to have, there are going to be disruptive forces, I believe, that try to prevent maybe this from occurring, because Hamas isn't going to want to lose power. And I think that's what they were doing domestically, is to still send a message, hey, we still have a presence here. But the fact that you had, and some of these rival gangs, their weapons were provided by Israel. But they're like, no, we don't think so. Your time is done here. And I just think all of that is brilliant, the way that it seemingly is playing out.
It is. What's great is that the people, and what everybody always knew, is that the Palestinian people themselves, by and large, were not violent. There's clearly a lot of them that did not ask for this war, that were not supportive of Hamas attacking, and they were caught in this. And if I were them, I would be taking up arms against Hamas at this point. And so, and that's why I think another step that's really smart that they did is they set it up so that these Muslim nations that are peaceful, places like Indonesia and Turkey, that the security or the construction is going to have to come out of those nations, because then any attacks on those individuals, like if Western people like the United States or Israel went in to rebuild Gaza, they would be attacked, or they would Hamas would figure out some way to attack them or to infiltrate. And I think that this is a good approach.
We're talking with Congressman Burleson. For his part, former U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that this was essentially his plan, that he's just really glad to see that Trump decided to pick up his plan and see it to completion. I mean, it's just like, are you serious? Come on. What a joke.
Okay, well, I agree. What a joke. But the real point is, okay, you had such a great plan. Why didn't you do it?
Right. Yeah.
What was it about you that you didn't have the ability to get it done?
If only they had more time.
Right.
Yeah. And, the thing of it is, even if there were some truth to it, how classless. You know what I mean? And it just sounds sad. Somebody trying to take, that originally was my plan and all. Like, okay, all right, Aunt.
My idea all along.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's not even, I mentioned earlier, it doesn't even really aggravate me, which oftentimes those things do. I've kind of almost felt sorry for the guy. Shutdown stuff. I mean, this is increasingly, I think, viewed by so many people as, when it comes to the average person not affected by it, people they're not bothered by this any longer. The calls of and the fears that are presented about, quote, government shutdowns is, to me, similar now to global warming or the glaciers. Or it's just, people have heard it so often. Even if they say, yeah, I've got concerns about that, ultimately, they're really not that worried about it. And I think that is certainly working in the favor of Trump and Republicans right now.
It is. I'm surprised at how little that I'm hearing in anger about it. I think that and to your point, I think a lot of what's shut down, people don't even have realized that it has any impact on their lives. I've had rare conversations where people, they weren't upset that we were shut down, but they expressed that this did. So one family told me that they had planned to go to one of the national parks when they were going to one of the western states, and now they can't do that. But they recognized, that's okay. We'll figure out something else to do, and life will go on, or we'll go back at another time when it is open. So it's not like it's upending people's lives. And the fear that I have, and the thing that I didn't want to see happen, and I'm glad President Trump figured out a way to make, is to pay the troops.
Yeah.
So most of the troops are paid, but some of them who were part-time or not, that were basically not full-time. They were basically considered non-essential, and so they were not getting paid.
Yeah.
And I think that that was a worry. I'm glad that that Trump was able to address that.
Someone had texted
and I think what's funny is the Democrats, are seething over that, because, and honestly, we've tried to have bills come forward that say during the shutdown, the troops are a priority and they should be paid. And same thing with TSA and air traffic controllers. But the Democrats won't let that happen because they need to take hostage these jobs for all of the other things that the left wants. And so by taking those things off the table, you've taken away something that they can leverage against us. And that's why they're seething about it. Now, they would never publicly say, oh, we want the troops to not be paid. But which is why by Trump figuring out a way to make it happen, you're not hearing them complain about it too much
Well,
publicly.
and I've got audio that I plan on playing later. JD Vance on with George Stephanopoulos, and one of the aspects of all this that I just really do get a genuine kick out of is how in the messaging approach the tables have been completely flipped. And you have Stephanopoulos asking about this absurd Tom Homan allegations that he took a bribe, and J.D. Vance immediately is like, well, you know what I'm upset about? The fact that there are single moms that don't have, they can't feed their kids because Schumer shut down he just starts rapid fire and turns it. I was like, this is what Democrats have always done in such a masterful way. And to see all of those tactics utilized in a way that is, I believe, coming off as successful, part of me just really enjoys watching it.
Yeah, I think that they're flailing.
Oh, yeah.
They're not doing a very good job of defending their position, and it's not a defendable position. They're asking for public policy to be accomplished within a continuing resolution, and it's just and honestly, what they're asking for is ridiculous. They're asking us to fix the failed portions of Obamacare,
Yeah, right.
and to do that with some miraculous way now. And I think ironic. So I think that by separating it, that if that's what we're really going to do, if we're going to go into Obamacare and figure out how to fix it, the Democrats want to do it in a way in which it's combined with a continuing resolution, because then they can leverage that, shutting down the government, with getting this. So that would be the perfect scenario for them. But if we can fund the government and take that and just now take that off the table, now the Democrats don't have that as a leverage point. They don't have the debt ceiling as a leverage point. And then we would be freed to actually reform Obamacare, to actually make it a free market system. To make it better.
Yeah, someone had texted in. We're talking with Congressman Burleson, and I haven't looked into the details of this. I've seen some what seem to be disputed claims regarding how it is that air traffic controllers are impacted by this, and someone had texted in asking why they're considered non-essential. Are they impacted by this, and is it because they're considered non-essential, and if so, do you know why?
I don't know. I don't want to speak in absolutes, because I'm sure that there are some that are considered non-essential. But by and large, the way I understand it, they are considered essential, which is why I think they're in a category where they are supposed to be working, but not necessarily being paid. And
got it.
And so for Trump, what he's done is move some money around within the proper agencies. So within the purview of Duffy, move money that Secretary Duffy has, move money from, say, infrastructure improvement projects for the time being to move those funds so that they're available to make sure these troops get paid, these air traffic controllers get paid. And the same thing happened with the troops.
Congressman Burleson, as always, it is a great pleasure. Appreciate you being with us this morning.
Have a great day.
All right, you do the same. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. You're already starting to feel that fall chill in the air, especially in the evening times. And before you switch that thermostat from cool to heat, make sure that your furnace is ready to take on that cooler weather. And who do I go to? Well, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air to keep my systems running smoothly. Now, fall, it really is the perfect time to schedule a maintenance check before that first cold snap really hits. And some of those smaller issues that you might be having turn into more big, more expensive problems. Now, the Foreman team, they do complete system inspections, and they're really upfront and honest about the work that needs to be addressed, and they don't pressure you into anything either. And they can help you out whether you need just an annual maintenance repair, maybe just a simple maintenance check, or maybe it's time to upgrade your unit. Whatever your HVAC needs, the Foreman team, they can help you out. So make sure that you get ahead of all of your annual fall maintenance and reach out to Russell and his team today. Now, you can find all of the contact information for Russell and his team under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I want to play a couple bits of audio. One, J.D. Vance and George Stephanopoulos, who has really turned out to be one of the worst. I think there was a period of time he rather successfully pulled off the appearance of being measured and fair, and that has just been completely thrown out the window, and he's a full-blown left-wing activist now, paid by ABC to be a news person. And he had J.D. Vance on, and you may not have known, the left lives in this world separate from everything that's actually going on. And you may be unaware that there was this report leaked that Tom Homan, Director of Homeland Security, that the FBI suspected him of taking a bribe at some point. And so supposedly there was video released that only certain people have seen. And the whole thing just reeks of a setup. And it's something that, he took $50,000 from these contractors. Well, this is when he was not in government and he was a consultant. He was an actual consultant. This is what he did. He would get retainers, and then he would do consultation work. And the whole thing, it is populated with the hallmarks of the Biden administration using police state, much like they tried to do with Trump to set him up for something. So anyway, this is something that the media has really been clinging to, and it is brought up to J.D. Vance. Now, the reason I'm playing this audio is to show how masterfully the Republicans and the Trump administration have stolen from Democrats their approach to dealing with issues and dealing with the government shutdown.
I don't know what tape you're referring to, George. I saw media reports that Tom Homan accepted a bribe. There's no evidence of that. And here's, George, why fewer and fewer people watch your program and why you're losing credibility. Because you're talking for now 5 minutes with the Vice President of the United States about this story regarding Tom Homan, a story that I've read about, but I don't even know the video that you're talking about. Meanwhile, low-income women can't get food because the Democrats and Chuck Schumer have shut down the government. Right now, we're trying to figure out how to pay our troops because Chuck Schumer has shut down the government. You are focused on a bogus story. You're insinuating criminal wrongdoing against a guy who has done nothing wrong instead of focusing on the fact that our country is struggling because our government's shut down. Let's talk about the real issues, George. I think the American people would benefit much more from that than from you going down some weird left-wing rabbit hole where the facts clearly show that Tom Homan didn't engage in any criminal wrongdoing.
It's not a weird left-wing rabbit hole. I didn't insinuate anything. I asked you whether Tom Homan accepted $50,000, as was heard on an audio tape recorded by the FBI in September 2024, and you did not answer the question. Thank you for your time this morning.
No, George, I said that I don't.
Up next, we'll be right back.
So then Stephanopoulos cut him off and went straight to break. Again, this is taking the Democrats' play, their approach. I can't tell you how long for how long many of you have expressed this frustration. Why is it that Republicans don't adopt the tactics of Democrats? Not the unethical or immoral ones, but in the approach. Republicans always have operated in a way in which the media would come at them with some sort of allegation, which perhaps is completely absurd. They would take allegations with no proof from the Democrats and report it as if it's just some sort of fact, and then asking, how do you respond? And Republicans felt compelled to explain well, this and that, and, just really get into the nuances of things, which made it seem as if the question itself was legitimate, as opposed to Democrats that would just dismiss and redirect. Now, their dismiss and redirect was often to avoid talking about the truth. J.D. Vance and what we have seen from an increasing number of Republicans here, it is to dismiss stories that are total BS and then to be like, oh, by the way, let's talk about this thing over here again that clearly the vast majority of Americans think very poorly of the Democrat Party in terms of their handling of it. I just love it. Speaker Mike Johnson, if we've got time, I think in the next segment we'll play his audio and what he has said, and this is not the biggest secret in the world. There were one of these nut job left-wing No King rally occurring in Washington, D.C., and Democrats were just waiting until that got over with before they began folding and voted for the continuing resolution. Speaker Mike Johnson talking about the shutdown. One of the goofs made by Chuck Schumer in trying to defend the Democrats in holding out to keep the government shut down was the fact that every day the shutdown continues, it's better for the Democrats. And that really allowed Republicans to pounce on that, saying, look, this is how they view this, that this is good for them. That's why they're doing it. Yesterday, I believe it was, Mike Johnson speaking further on the fact that the government is continuing its shutdown due to the Democrat Party, specifically in the Senate.
Go ahead, Ainsley.
Thank you, Lawrence. So how do you react when you hear Chuck Schumer saying, every day gets better for us? What about the people who aren't getting paid? What about the women who are here while their husbands are deployed? What about people who are trying to go on vacation or go away for the holiday weekend and their flights are delayed or canceled? How is that better for everybody?
Real harm to real people, and we're hearing it from our constituents. The House Republicans right now are in their districts working, trying to help people through this crisis that's being created by the Democrats. I mean, it's health services, it's nutrition services for young mothers and infant children. It's, all manner of services that are provided. FEMA, they can't write flood insurance policies in the middle of a hurricane season because of this nonsense. And we're so angry about it. I mean, I'm a very patient guy, but I have had it with these people. They're playing games with real people's lives. The theory we have right now, they have a Hate America rally that's scheduled for October 18th on the National Mall. It's all the pro-Hamas wing and the Antifa people. They're all coming out. Some of the House Democrats are selling T-shirts for the event, and it's being told to us that they won't be able to reopen the government until after that rally because they can't face their rabid base. I mean, this is serious business, hurting real people. And I'm beyond words. I can't believe they're actually doing this.
Now, I had my weekends wrong. I was thinking that rally was this weekend, but Mike Johnson noting that it's supposed to be on October 18th. Yeah, that's not a good look for Democrats selling T-shirts for the event and I love the move by Republicans. I hope that this is something that increasingly they do, is make it known that that's the plan, that the Democrats plan on waiting until they sell the T-shirts and get all of their supporters all riled up, and then once it's done, betray them by supporting the continuing resolution. So we'll see what happens with that next week. Springfield's Talk 104.1. Hello and welcome to this show. My name is Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. She joined us on Friday. We talked about the fact that there are more realtors in the area than actual houses on the market, and the importance of making sure you interview the realtor. They are not all alike. It's easy to believe that you're going to get relatively the same level of service with everyone you utilize. Like, you think about maybe like car shopping. Yes, there are going to be different personalities. Some people may be a little pushier than others, but overall, you're still going to have someone that tells you about the vehicle and that gives you a test drive, and ultimately, it's all pretty much the same interaction. It is not that way with realtors. You have so many of these individuals, and Emily pointed out, listen, it's not that difficult. $500, you take a test, and you become a licensed realtor. And for some, that's where it ends. They see it as a way to supplement my income, sort of like a side gig. Emily Johnson has passion. This is what she does 364 days every single year, and along with her husband, Will, something that I've mentioned on a number of occasions. He handles more of the large land masses. If you are someone who is looking to purchase a farm with 1,200 acres, he is going to be the guy that is taking care of that. So you have the best of both worlds, whether you're looking to live out away from everyone or you're looking for that cozy little home in your favorite neighborhood that you always dreamed of living in with the white picket fence and everything in between. It's covered with those two. That's part of the passion. That's part of what you get when it comes to home buying and home selling. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. A couple of text messages regarding Donald Trump and the accusations that he is a king and that there is apparently going to be another left-wing lunatic No Kings event in Washington, D.C. next Saturday. And the word is, and Mike Johnson mentioned this, he's not the only one. The word is out. The Democrats, they feel as if they absolutely cannot reopen the government while that is something that is an event coming up, because they don't want it to turn against them. Now, does that mean that as soon as next weekend is complete, that they have a path forward in terms of allowing the government to reopen? We don't know. But the one thing that appears to be the case is they are afraid of their own base, and so they don't want to reopen the government and then have just days after that their left-wing lunatic conspiracy theory base having some sort of rally in Washington, D.C., because they don't want them to turn again. They know they're crazy. And they know that they can turn dangerous. And they've convinced them of all of these lies that the continuing resolution is going to do all these horrible, awful things when this is simply continuing the level of spending from the Biden administration. And a great point made by Brett texting in. It seems to me if we had a king, the king would overrule the legislature and simply command that the government be reopened. Yeah. That's true. For all of you no kings people, Donald Trump, he's a king. He wants to be a king. He's trying to be a king. If Donald Trump is the wannabe dictator you claim, why is he allowing a handful of Democrats to keep the government closed down? That doesn't seem very king-like. Just like it doesn't seem very Hitler-like to be welcomed before the Knesset in Israel as the greatest ally Israel has ever had occupying the White House. He's a bad dictator. He's a bad Hitler. He's a really bad racist. We've seen that on a number as he tries to clean up the black neighborhoods specifically in Washington, D.C., Chicago, these other areas. He's the one who is fighting for the right of people of color to live the same quality of life as rich white liberals. So he's a really bad racist. But yes, a king certainly would not allow a handful of opposition, as if they would exist anyhow, to keep the government shut down. Sent from the app. Maybe I'm a little bit ignorant with this, who is the government worker and who's not. But my question is, why are air traffic controller government employees? Why couldn't the airliners hire their own traffic controllers? Well, and I don't know that the airlines would as much as the airports themselves. This is a good question, and I say it's a good question because it's one that probably most people never think of, because the answer is, well, government has to do that. Okay, but why? I don't know the origins of the air traffic controller. They may have been private at one point, just like TSA. Airport security prior to 9/11, airports handled all that. Was not involved. There's no government involvement. And then after 9/11, the same government that turned a blind eye to the coming terrorist attack, although hindsight is 2020, declared that they were the same government that needed to take over airport security in order to protect us from a future terrorist attack. And we have become so comfortable with that. I guarantee you, if anyone seriously proposed putting it back in the hands of the airports themselves, there would be all sorts of fear-mongering, and the sky is falling, and we'll have another 9/11. And that's because as human beings, many of us, not all of us, but many of us, love the security of government, despite its failing track record, to come and say, don't worry, we're the only ones who can do this, and we do it better than absolutely anyone else. And that just makes people feel good. It's a certain kind of person that makes feel good, but they exist. And if one were to suggest maybe air traffic controllers should be private as well and not have any sort of connection to the government, without even exploring the question and looking at the history of the air traffic controller, and has it always been this way? I don't know the answer to that. But it's a good question. And I think it's one that, I suppose that would be Duffy's department, his transportation secretary. I think it deserves exploring. I don't know if the answer is to privatize it. I suspect there's a good chance that, as opposed to government involvement, that would be a better option. But I don't know. I can't say for certainty. These are the sorts of questions we should be asking and willing to explore. Coming up, Trump restoring Columbus Day to the elation of Italians, but some clearly, I don't know, the liberals that have a real problem with Italians pitching a bit of a fit over this, and they do my favorite thing because I get to talk about the truth. Every Columbus Day is reflect on the fact that many of them have replaced it with Indigenous People Day. Oh, because they are all peace-loving individuals that pick up litter. We know this from, TV and commercials and things. Springfield's Talk 1041, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see isolated showers before noon along and north of I-44, and then mostly cloudy with a high near 77. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 83. And taking a look at Wednesday, sunny skies with a high near 82.
wanted to read. Oh boy. Oh boy. Please hold. Okay. Trying to zoom in here. You know, funny story. When the girl child was really young, we had gotten a box of the Harry Potter Jelly Bellies. You know, they have all the weird different flavors. And my wife was trying to read the back of the box, and the print was really small. And I saw her take her finger and thumb, and on the back of it, yes. And I was like, "What did you just do?" And she knew immediately. She's like, "I'm such an idiot." Watching her try to zoom the back of the box in. That's
Did it
what
work?
it did not work.
Boo.
Yes, the Jelly Bellies were not quite that magical.
Sorry to hear that.
Here's what Barbara had to say about Pinnagar Honda. I cannot say enough good things about Pinnagar Honda from the receptionist who greeted us as we came in to the sales consultant, product specialist, and finance specialist who assisted us with our purchase. Our experience was pleasant to the extreme. Baylor Alexander was friendly, knowledgeable, and professional, answering any question we had, and some we didn't even think to ask. Justin Cartwright went over all the features of the Honda Ridgeline we purchased. Ooh, jealous. Love the Ridgeline. Making sure we knew where all of the controls were and how to adjust any setting to our preferences. We were treated courteously and professionally. The process was easy and efficient, and we left happy with our purchase and our experience. This is customer service at its finest. Thank you, Pinnagar Honda. And that's why I recommend them as well. Of course, all the Pinnagar family locations of Pinnagar Honda there on South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. You know, the mention here, it almost sounds funny. Let's see. Making sure we knew where all the controls were. And you think, well, but I'm telling you, now, I'm sure you know this, unless you haven't purchased a new vehicle in the last 10 years, you can get in those things and have no concept of what's going on other than sometimes even put in drive. You know, back in the day, you got a gear shift, you know where it is. It's on the column, and you pull it down once for reverse. And then, sometimes you got to look around. Oh, it's a knob down here by the e-brake. Or, it's... you got to push in the little top of the shifter, and it's all digital. And so a lot of those functions at once upon a time were intuitive. And I mean, just gee, many Christmas, the radio aspect of thing and GPS, they really do, I think, and that's why I love to hear that about Pinnagar Honda, let you know when you buy a vehicle, okay, listen, now here's some of the things that you need to know, because otherwise you lost. My mother-in-law bought a new vehicle a couple of years ago, and there were some things that, she felt silly. She's like, I don't even know how to do this. Like, don't feel silly. I said, I'll have to figure it out myself. This stuff is not intuitive any longer. And so taking that extra step, like I think her name was Barbara there, had noted from Pinnagar Honda, it's very important step, I'd say, especially if you've not owned one of the newer vehicles. Trump restores Columbus Day as a federal holiday. Italians from Giorgia Meloni to American politicians loving it, some liberals in blue cities resisting, continuing to embrace the alternate Indigenous People Day. We'll get to that in a moment. Former President Joe Biden was the first U.S. president to issue a formal proclamation recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day in 2021 rather than Columbus Day, which honors Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas in 1492. Trump issuing the proclamation on Thursday that accused, quote, left-wing arsonist of attempting to destroy Columbus's name and dishonor in his memory. And I would argue that left-wingers are more than happy to claim credit for that. I don't think they make any secret of the fact they want to destroy his name and dishonor his memory. Some cities still recognizing Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples Day. In 2019, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser signed a bill that designated Indigenous People Day in D.C. as a replacement for Columbus Day. The city government continues to recognize the day as Indigenous Peoples Day despite Trump's proclamation, according to a post on X. Bowser, writing in a social media post Sunday, remember, in observance of Indigenous People Day at DCDPW will slide household trash and recycling collections to the next day. I love that. The recognition by the mayor of Washington, D.C. for Indigenous Peoples Day was to let you know trash service would be put off a day. Columbus Day was not officially renamed as a federal holiday. Despite that, Trump has taken steps to keep the second Monday in October as Columbus Day. Italian Prime Minister Meloni thanked Trump for restoring Columbus Day and for thus reminding us that history cannot be erased. Quote, and I thank him for having on this occasion reaffirmed the ancient bond that unites our two nations and that both intend to strengthen. Also, thanks to the precious contributions of the proud Italian-American community. Why is it okay to crap all over, by the way, for the left to crap all over the Italian community by trying to destroy the name of Christopher Columbus? I think we know why. It's because they're white. Longtime Trump advisor Rogan Stone said Italian Americans, quote, across the country are celebrating after Trump restored the holiday. According to Pew Research, in 5 states, Columbus Day shares its spot on the calendar with Indigenous Peoples Day. In America, Samoa, the two holidays are concurrently commemorated by governor's memo each year. Critics argue Columbus's legacy should not be honored. Liberal organizations like MoveOn.org, the ACLU, Democratic Socialist of America, and the Sunrise Movement support eliminating Columbus Day. On Saturday in Boston, protesters briefly confronted police during an Indigenous People Day or event in the Blue City. Doesn't that run counter to what we're told about Indigenous people, how peaceful they were? Seems a little inappropriate to turn violent in their name. According to an NPR report, Carrie Malloy, a professor of Native American and Indigenous Studies at San Jose State University, argued that Columbus's arrival to the Americas, quote, triggered a mass genocide of indigenous people throughout the Western Hemisphere. See, here's the news flash. No one is responsible for the genocide of indigenous people to the degree that other indigenous people are. I mean, that is the largest amount of slaughtering to occur of indigenous people were by other indigenous people. There were entire tribes that went extinct because of other indigenous people tribes. Despite that, Malloy said Trump's proclamation reiterates the American fantasy of Columbus's voyage as solely a story of discovery and exploration versus what it really was about, commerce and the exploitation of resources. Matthew Fletcher, director of the Indigenous Law and Policy Center at Michigan State University, argued that there isn't a groundswell to keep Columbus Day. Well, this is how you delete history. You make it separate from the culture, convince people it's irrelevant, and then that it needs to go away. He went on to say, this is the president trolling people of color, underrepresented minorities that tend not to vote for his party or candidacy. My sense is there's not a massive groundswell in favor of Columbus Day anymore, except possibly the Italian Americans. Well, you Italian trash. Don't you love how openly the left dismisses Italians? Psh, I mean, the only people who care about this are Italian trash. Olive Garden rats. This anti-Italian sentiment that they may claim is an anti-Italian, but look at how it is that they dismiss them. This is this is a Michigan State University employee. Nobody cares about Italians anyway. Who cares? Just stinking Italians. To openly be so hostile towards an entire grouping of people is actually pretty typical of the left. It just depends on where you fall on the hierarchy. And Italians are way down towards the bottom. I grabbed a piece from The Federalist. It's actually several years old. I think it's about 8 years old. Briefly explaining why Indigenous Peoples Day is far worse than Columbus Day. And I thought I'd share that coming up next. I'm Nick Reed. We're going to toss things over to traffic here just about 60 seconds early, and then I'm doing this for timing purposes because I don't want to read a portion of this Federalist piece and then stop and then read the latter portion of it. But it's all, listen, if people want to say we should not have Columbus Day because Christopher Columbus was responsible for genocide and slavery and did all of these horrible things, then replacing it with Indigenous Peoples Day is about as boneheaded of a move as one can make. The amount of, quote, slavery that Christopher Columbus was directly responsible for pales in comparison to slaves that were owned by indigenous people. Slavery was here well before Christopher Columbus. And that's because indigenous people had slaves. They also were so brutally cruel to one another. There were numerous tribes that went completely that completely became extinct, wiped off the planet. This is the irony of replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day based off of humanitarian purposes. You did it wrong. Let's do the traffic, continue on. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 417-447 KSGF.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see isolated showers before noon along and north of I-44, and then mostly cloudy with a high near 77. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 62. For your Tuesday, mostly sunny with a high near 83. And taking a look at Wednesday, sunny with a high near 82. And the Pyramid Roofing Company, Josh joined us on Friday, and one thing that he mentioned is that there is sometimes a misconception that you can't do a new roof install in the fall and winter months, and that's not true. Josh, he mentioned that if you do plan to do a new roof install in the next couple of months, that you can actually expect a quicker turnaround, and oftentimes you can actually get a discounted rate as well. But if you can't wait a couple of months, the Pyramid team, they are currently about a week out on roof inspections and about 3 weeks out on new roof roof installs. And of course, if you need any type of emergency care, the Pyramid team, they offer emergency tarping services as well. So if it is time to have the Pyramid team out to your home, reach out to Josh today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
There is this, well, there has been for some time now, this effort to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day. And the reason being, we're told, is Columbus should not be celebrated because of his anti-humanitarian ways, because he dabbled in slavery and genocide and so forth. Well, it's as if people said, who could we pick that would be the worst option in order to try and counter his behavior? Let's go with Indigenous people. This refusal to just even acknowledge the truth about Indigenous people and their ownership of slavery and torture and the extermination of other tribes. Listen, it doesn't mean that they're bad. Like, it's not as if the Indigenous people of today owe something because of that. They aren't the ones who did it. I mean, none of us own the sins of our ancestors, but it's just this complete rewriting of history. I grabbed a piece from the Federalist. Now, I believe this is from back in 2017. There are a number of different pieces that one can find explaining why this is not the best choice of replacement for Columbus Day. And Matthew Graham, at the time, was a CBS News contributor and political editor at the New Hampshire Journal. And in his piece, he wrote why, this is the title, why Indigenous Peoples Day is far worse than Columbus Day. Now, again, this is 2017, I believe. Los Angeles and Austin, Texas, have now joined the list of liberal-run cities that have eradicated Columbus Day from their calendars and replaced it with Indigenous Peoples Day. In L.A., the desire to diss the European discoverer was so strong they rejected a compromise proposal to keep Columbus Day and add Indigenous Peoples Day elsewhere. Quote, we need to dismantle a state-sponsored celebration of genocide of indigenous people, said Chrissy Castro of the L.A. Native American Indian Commission. Quote, to make us celebrate on any other day would be further injustice. Most Americans don't agree. A new Marist poll finds 56% of Americans admire Columbus and support Columbus Day. They reject the idea that it's a holiday about slaughter and enslavement. However, if we really want to commemorate horrifying, unspeakable violence and oppression in the Americas, I've got the perfect holiday, Indigenous Peoples Day. Long before the white European knew a North American continent even existed, Indians of the Northern Plains were massacring entire villages, says George Franklin Feldman in the book Cannibalism, Headhunting, and Human Sacrifice in North America, A History Forgotten. And not just killed, but mutilated, hands and feet cut off. Each body's head was scalped, and remains were left scattered around the village, which was then burned. When thinking of pre-Columbian America, forget what you've seen in the Disney movies. Think, instead, slavery, cannibalism, and mass human sacrifice. From the Aztec to the Iroquois, that was life amongst the indigenous people before Columbus ever arrived. For all of the talk from the angry and indigenous about European slavery, it turns out that pre-Columbian America was virtually one huge slave camp. According to Slavery and Native Americans in British North America and the United States, 1600 to 1865, by Tony Seibert, quote, most Native American tribal groups practiced some form of slavery before the European introduction of African slavery into North America. Enslaved warriors sometimes endured mutilation, torture, that could end in death as part of a grief ritual for relatives slain in battle. Some Indians cut off 1 foot of their captives to keep them from running away. Things changed when the Europeans arrived, however. Indians found that British settlers eagerly purchased or captured Indians to use as forced labor. More and more, Indians began selling war captives to white people. That's right. Pocahontas and her pals were slave traders. If you were an Indian lucky enough to be sold to a European slave master, that turned out to be a good thing, relatively speaking. At least you didn't end up in a scene from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Ritual human sacrifice was widespread in the Americas. The Incas, for example, practiced ritual human sacrifice to appease their gods, either executing captive warriors or their own specially raised, perfectly formed children, according to Kim McQuarrie, author of The Last Days of the Incas. The Aztecs, on the other hand, were more into the volume approach to ritual human slaughter. At the reconsecration of the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan in 1487, the Aztecs performed a mass human sacrifice of an estimated 80,000 enslaved captives in just 4 days. 80,000 slaves they slaughtered in 4 days. According to eyewitness accounts of indigenous people at work, in this case the Iroquois, in 1642, as observed by a Reverend Father Bartholomew Vimont, the Jesuit relations captives had their fingers cut off, were forced to set each other on fire, and had their skin stripped off, and in one captured warrior's case, the torture continued throughout the night, building to a fervor, finally ending at sunrise by cutting his scalp open, forcing sand into the wound, and dragging his mutilated body around the camp. When they finished, the Iroquois carved up and ate parts of his body. It's much better than Columbus Day. Shocked? Don't be. Cannibalism was also fairly common in the New World before and after Columbus arrived. According to numerous sources, the name Mohawk comes from the Algonquin for flesh eaters. Anthropologist Marvin Harris, author of Cannibals and Kings, reports that the Aztecs viewed their prisoners as marching meat. The native peoples also had an odd obsession with people's heads. Scalping was a common practice among many tribes, while some, like the Yavaro in the Andes, were feared for their head hunting, shrinking their victims' heads to the size of an orange. Even sports involved severed heads. If you were lucky enough to survive a game of the wildly popular Mesoamerican ball, losers often decapitated to paradise, your trophy could include an actual human head. Slavery, torture, and cannibalism. Tell me why we're celebrating Indigenous People Day again? And we're getting rid of Columbus Day to protest what? The fact that one group of slavery-practicing violent people conquered another group of violent, bloodthirsty slavers. That's a precise precis of the history of the Americas before Columbus ever arrived. This has always been the fatal flaw of the left's politics of race guilt. Name the race that's not guilty. Racism, violence, and conquest are part of the human condition, not limited to European ones. There is, however, one key difference between the European conquistadors and the Incas, Aztecs, and Iroquois, who conquered the Americas before them. In addition to violence and greed, the Europeans also brought literacy, liberalism, and the scientific method, all of which would transform America into the greatest champion of human freedom the world has ever known. Do the anti-Columbus activists who claim Europe's conquest of America is a sin really want to live in a world where it never happened? Where America is an illiterate, technological backwater of tribal violence and ritual human sacrifice? Of course not. The only reason their ideological idiocy has free reign today is because Europeans showed up in 1492. Happy Columbus Day. Now, that's just one variation of a very detailed history that is not unknown, but unfortunately is rarely taught, because we live in this crafted fantasy world. And the proof of it is this very fact that you have people pushing to end Columbus Day and replace it with Indigenous People Day. If the call here was to get rid of Columbus Day because, he was a bad guy and okay with slavery and slaughtered some people, and then that's where it stopped, or you said we should have Mother Teresa Day, or someone that wasn't known for committing human atrocities, that would be one thing. But the fact that they want to replace it with people who have been responsible for some of the most brutal slavery and torture and slaughtering of other people that we have on record, it just defies everything that is reality. It doesn't mean that Indigenous people of today have blood on their hands. It doesn't mean that Indigenous people of today owe something to other tribes that were rendered extinct because of their tribe. But this picking and choosing by the historical ignorant or the completely dishonest of taking Columbus Day and somehow promoting it as virtuous, that Indigenous Peoples Day replaces Columbus Day. It's insanely ridiculous and in complete defiance of truth and history. And it shows once again that when it comes to the left, the promotion of Indigenous People Day has nothing whatsoever to do with not promoting genocide, not promoting slavery, not promoting torture, because that's exactly what they're doing. Those issues mean nothing to them. Only in as far as they can use it to try and take out a political enemy or opposition, and in this case, it's America's history. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments in Childs versus Salazar, and this is regarding California's law that makes it illegal to counsel someone. If you've got, let's say, somebody who's got mental issues, emotional mental issues, and they have, they're been introduced to the idea that, well, it's because you're trapped in the wrong body. And they want an alternative perspective, or they don't want to go through surgeries. When you think about it, let's say you're 14 years old. You are a female who's been sexually assaulted. And because of that, you you have these emotionally confused and damaging feelings about your female body, which is not uncommon for young female victims of sexual assault. As they begin to develop, they hate it because they connect that with the sexual assault. And what has unfortunately happened is those individuals oftentimes get targeted and told, well, you're probably going to kill yourself if you don't get a sex change operation. Now imagine you're a 14-year-old and you're being told this. And you don't want to have a sex change operation. You don't want to have chemicals pumped into your body that will change you irreversibly. You want to have kids one day. And so you decide you want to see a counselor that is going to help you move away from those feelings of rejecting your body and get to the real root of the problem. Well, in Colorado, that's illegal. They call that conversion therapy. And I believe there are a number of states that also have similar laws that ban conversion therapy because what they claim is that it is a therapy or counseling that is taking what is otherwise a perfectly normal person just trapped in the wrong body, and you may counsel them into believing that they are actually in the right body, that you are a special human being, and that your problems that you have are because of potentially this sexual assault or being molested or some other real root problem, not you're trapped in the wrong body. And the left, they don't want that. They want to make it illegal. They have made it illegal in some states. Now, it sounds as if the Supreme Court recognizes this by their questioning as complete discrimination. And, you know, it appears just based off of the questioning, this sort of law is something that they're going to find to be unconstitutional. But think about the absurdity of this for a moment. You have people on, this is the mindset of people on the left. If you have emotional, psychological issues, and you think that maybe it's because you're trans, but you don't know, and you want to receive counseling, and maybe it's for religious reasons, to help guide you through this so that you don't want to be having a sex change operation, and that they say is so dangerous that it has to be outlawed. But taking that same person and lobbing off their private parts and pumping them full of chemicals that can never be reversed, that is perfectly fine and normal. What sort of mind does one have to have in order to think that makes sense in any world? Furthermore, think of the implications of this. Let's say that you are a straight up normal therapist. And maybe you believe that, yeah, some of these young people probably truly are, quote, trans. But you also recognize, because it makes total sense, probably not everyone is. That there just may be some young people out there who have been convinced this is their problem when it really isn't. So you're open. Every situation is different. And then you have a young person come to you as a counselor. And this is someone that was the victim of sexual assault and that has all of the earmarks of a person whose problem has nothing to do with being trans whatsoever, but is rooted in other areas. But they come to you and they say, well, I've been thinking about this trans thing. I was told by my high school counselor that that if I don't do this, it could be even more problematic, and I may kill myself if I don't do it. But you know, as a professional, that's not what's going on here. If you counsel them in the right direction in a scenario like that, you're running afoul of the law. Because the left can say, look, you talked them out of it. You converted them to believing that they were actually born in the right body. What this law does is it dictates in places that it is the law, like Colorado, that if you are a counselor and you have someone coming to you with these confused feelings, you have to tell them, oh, yes, you're trans. Because otherwise would be a violation of the conversion therapy laws that say, you can't counsel people out of it. What's the point? What is the point of having counseling if the law dictates a predetermined diagnosis and tells therapists, counselors, anyone that may be in that profession, that when you deal with someone who is having these struggles, it doesn't matter what they say, it doesn't matter what their background is, it is illegal for you to counsel them that their problems are rooted in something else that has nothing to do with trans, and they don't need to have some sort of sex change operation, and God forbid that may even make it worse. What a backwards anti-mental health approach to take. This is how perversely obsessed the left has become when it comes to coaxing young people with psychological issues into getting sex change operations. And it appears, hopefully, as if even the Supreme Court, as much as, who knows with Brown Jackson, the way she'll go on it, but that as nutty as some of those leftists are, even they recognized the archaic nature of this. Now, I suspect that their ruling will be based more off of issues of free speech and discrimination as opposed to the true evil nature of this. But if it protects therapists from facing jail time for actually counseling people based off of the truth and what the real root of their issues is, and if it prevents young people from losing any options whatsoever other than reinforcing what they've already been told about having to get a sex change operation, otherwise they'll kill themselves. If it saves those individuals, then they can give whatever rationale they want. In the end, at least that's better than the current system in place in some of these states like Colorado. Don't forget all your home loans, home loan needs, refinancing, reverse mortgage. I've heard of that, but is it legit? Well, The Carrickers and the team help guide you through all of that. And if you are still waiting for interest rates to hit a certain point, get with them. Get all the paperwork set and in place. So once those interest rates get to your magic number, boom, out of the gate, you can be off and running. But you may find in conversations with them that waiting for that moment may not actually be in your best financial interest. That's why they're great to talk with, provide you with information, and all of their contact info is at I Want a Great Home.